So today we are talking about defining purpose. Why am I in medicine? My name is Chief of 𝗵𝗂𝗳𝗶𝗶, and I'm delighted to anchor this particular topic. So I have outline. I hope we can follow this offline. So it's a bit funny because you see my story part one, understanding your purpose, and then my story continues again. And that's because God just kept nudging me to tell my story. I don't know how important my story is, but I believe it might help one or two people here. So we'll have an introduction. We'll define a few terms to help us understand the topic better, and then I'll start sharing my story as best as I can. And then we'll look at understanding your purpose, our purposes actually. I'll tell a bit more of my story, and then we'll look at understanding our purposes again and how we can fulfill our purpose in medicine, and then we will conclude. So by way of introduction, we have that God made man, spirit, soul, and body. Does anyone disagree with this? Or do we all agree with it? That God made spirit, body. Can I have a witness in the house? Okay.
Yeah,
okay, all right. Praise God. So thank you. And we see this in 1 Thessalonians 5:23. This is a very, in fact, if you're in CMD and you don't know this verse, sorry. And while he created man, spirit, soul, and body, he's desirous of the well-being of man. Let me just read that scripture. Okay, so it says, and the very God of peace sanctify you wholly. And I pray, God, your whole spirit and soul and body be preserved blameless. Right? I mean, if my body is preserved blameless, it means it will be void of diseases. All right. So God is interested. And we can also see in the book of 3 John, where it said, I wish above all things that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. The Christian medic is perhaps the most equipped person on earth for this purpose. There's a story I usually tell, and I've told it several times. It's in the scriptures about the Samaritan, right? In some versions, he starts the Good Samaritan, and when he found a man injured, he was attacked. Now we find that he sustained bodily injuries, as it were, and a priest walked past him, quite in a hurry to get to his destination. He had a powerful message to preach, I tell myself. He looked at the man, had a bit of pity, and then he continued. He couldn't really do much for the man. The Levite also came, and same thing happened. And then this Samaritan came, and he stopped. And I wonder, on a good day, let's say maybe he was on a donkey, so that would probably serve as his Toyota Hiace bus or ambulance. And the Bible said he bound the man's wound. He applied balm to it. It wasn't recorded that he ran to a nearby store to buy the balm and the bandage. So it presupposes that this man had the balm and the bandage with him on that journey. And it tells me that he probably was a medic. Praise God. So he went on and he bound this man's wound. And not only did he do that, he didn't move the man to an A&E. He rather checked the man into an inn, meaning that he had utmost confidence in what he had done, that this man will probably not require further care. And he handed over to the manager of the inn and said, look, go ahead and do what you have to do. And whatever bill you in taking care of this man, just let me know. When I come back, I'll. So we see here a medic, and for us as Christian medic, this is the posture that God will have us assume. Hence, me saying that the Christian medics is perhaps the most equipped for that purpose. Let's take a look at some definitions. To define means to state precisely the meaning of something, to describe the nature of something, to clarify something or lend clarity to it. Okay, so purpose means the reason for which someone or something exists. It could also mean an intended or desired result, a goal. So when we're defining purpose, we are literally stating the reason we exist as medical personnel. We could also be describing of our goal or intended desired results for being in medicine. Medicine is the science or practice of the diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of diseases. Practice of diagnosis. So we make diagnosis, we offer treatment as the case may be, and we also offer preventive measures. Okay, this technically includes surgery as well. Now, in telling my story, it's about me and the difficulty I had understanding why I even got into medicine in the first place. So growing up, my father had a good job, but we weren't rich. I won't classify us as being rich. And then my father made it worse by taking up many more people to train and cater for. I recall we lived in 𝗵𝗻𝗄𝗏, and we lived in a public house, what you would describe as face me, I face you. And so of all the rooms there, we had three rooms actually. So one served as the sitting room, and there was an adjoining room to that. And then we had a third room somewhere at the back of the building, same floor. My parents and then myself and 6 siblings, making 9 of us as a family. And then we had maybe an additional 9 or 10. So we're a total of 18, 19 people living in those 3 rooms, 2 rooms and a parlor. And of course, I was the last child, so that meant I was the smallest. And yes, I was loved. Yes, I was catered for. Imagine my eldest sister being 18 years my senior. She would usually get to sort me out in one way or the other. But we didn't have the basic things we would have loved to have, to watch a movie. I recall when we watched the 1982 World Cup, Mexico 82. We watched in neighbors' houses. In fact, because I was so small and short, somebody will have to carry me on his shoulder so I could see through the window of my neighbor, one of the few that had a television set, you know, and so we would watch the match. And if for any reason the person got tired, they would drop me, and until the person gets enough strength or somebody else is willing to carry me. So I didn't, it wasn't a life of affluence, and we lacked a number of things. So I desired a better life as a person, as a child growing up. I wanted better for myself and my future family. So going through primary school, secondary school, I was very determined that I would be successful. In fact, I will make money. You know, I said to myself, and how I would make money, I didn't know, but I just knew that, okay, not now that you have a lot of non-professionals, even wealthier than professionals. Back in the day, we're taught that most people in the middle class were professionals, and the doctor happens to be top on that list. So it wasn't very difficult to say I wanted to be a doctor. I desired to be wealthy, to be prosperous. And seeing as a doctor is that professional, you're guaranteed of a good job, I desiring a doctor. And then, sorry, can you hear me? It's saying my internet is on. Can you hear me? Just let me know you can still hear me.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. I had a cousin who was also a doctor. He was a doctor at the time, and he was one of the most revered people in my village, in my town. Anytime home, my goodness, anywhere he went to, people revered him, and he was very comfortable. He used to put of money around. Anytime he went to his hospital there in Delta State, somewhere in Abo, to give money, he didn't have to sign a check or anything. He would just pull his drawer and bring out bundles of notes, sometimes mints, and he will count and give to you. So you can imagine he further buttressed my decision to become a doctor. Yeah. This getaway plan from poverty, I really needed to not be poor. My parents weren't poor, but remember I said, my dad had close to 20 people he was catering for. So there was no room for those extras, and I desired more. And so this made me decide, and I wrote JAMB. I recall my set stayed home even after we finished secondary school for about a year plus, because there was delay in writing JAMB. There was this strike action that made final years not to graduate, so schools weren't willing to take in fresh students, so JAMB was delayed. So I remember I picked up my JAMB form sometime in June of that year, and I filled medicine, first choice, UNTH or UNN, medicine and surgery. Second choice was IFE, medicine and surgery. And so even my dad asked me why, and I said to him, it's got to be medicine or surgery. And he said, why not choose something else, just in case, if you don't qualify for medicine and surgery? And I said, no, it's got to be medicine and surgery. If UNN didn't take me, IFE will take me. If I'm not taking, I'll go back and write medicine and surgery. So this informed my getting into UNN as a medical student. In fact, something happened. I entered on the supplementary list. So even when it seemed like it wasn't going to happen, somehow it happened. So I said, Haba, this is it. I mean, for me to have entered. But the interesting thing was that while I picked my JAMB form to enter medicine because of that, I was an unbeliever. And barely 3, 4, 5 weeks after I submitted my JAMB form, I encountered Christ. So when I encountered Christ, of course, God started talking to me, revealing things to me. So when I gained admission as a believer, right? It meant that my desire to be wealthy was nothing, it didn't change so much, but somehow, while I was in med school, started changing. And I started asking questions, which we'll get to later on. So we'll take a break from my story, and then to understand our purpose in medicine. This was one of the questions I asked myself, if really I was supposed to be in medicine. Okay? Because it occurred to me that God had to pave the way. God had to show me what to do. I stopped living for myself, and I had to start, God, am I in the right place? I know I'm talking to young doctors, post-youth service, post-junior residents. And the question that we need to ask ourselves, really, if we're supposed to be in medicine, do you know you are supposed to be in medicine? And the testimony our brother gave about his encounter during youth service. And I can tell that I believe he has a place in medicine. Okay? When you are in medicine, or when you know you're to be in medicine, there will be this empathy. You will have empathy. Yes, you may experience occasional apprehension, but you see the satisfaction you get at the end of the day when your patients recover, when you prevent that disease from spreading successfully, it supersedes the apprehension that you get. I'm pretty much sure that most of us get apprehensive when we're handling some cases. But, you know, when you consider that joy, the fact that this person will do better, you still put yourself in it. You're constantly seeking ways to improve your practice and not just the earnings. Then you know you are in medicine. What will let you know you are not in medicine? You will feel bored. Thought of just waking up to go to the hospital, go to your office, like it. You are perpetually apprehensive about the outcome of whatever it is, your red flag. If I was talking to medical students now, you could say, okay, they still have the opportunity to change. But truth be told, if you feel this way, you need to look further, because it's better you exit than for you to continue. I'm not trying to dissuade anyone. You will know medicine is a ministry and you can't do it when you are not sure. That's the honest truth. So I said in this slide here that if you've pondered upon it and you have those red flags, you lack the desire to improve your practice, you don't show empathy, you don't even, this person is gone, this person is gone. You see people as cases, really, then you may need to reconsider. I want to believe there is none of us in that category, but just in case there is, it's good you consider exiting ASAP. But if you confirm the fact that yes, medicine is your thing and you're supposed to be in medicine, then you can proceed on to the next set of questions. And the first one here is, what is medicine to you? Is medicine an end to a means or a means to an end? I recall this was actually one of the themes back in the day of NCCMDS. And it was very interesting. At first, I didn't understand this, but let me bring this home. I'll use an analogy. Now, if question is this car a means to an end or an end to a means? Being an end to a means that everything I do is going to end up with me getting this car. And I will get this car at all costs. That is the end to all my struggles, to all my hassles. This car is an end to a means. I will toil, I will fight, I will work, I will run, I will have just to get the car. It becomes an end to a means. If the car, on the other hand, is a means to an end, what it means is that this car is just, okay, this car will serve as a vehicle to get to an end. So I wake up in the morning and I take a look at the car. I'm not crazy about it. That is not what I am living for. That is not what I wake up in the morning to see. No. I get into the car, I start the ignition, and I drive. It carries me to where I am going to. What medicine is to you would determine how you engage in it. Now, if medicine is an end to a means for you, what it means is that every effort you make is aimed at remaining relevant as a doctor. You know, perhaps people even contributed money to sponsor you through school, and you are now a doctor. Whatever you do from that moment is to keep you relevant as a doctor, and you will do anything and everything to remain relevant as a doctor. The second thing is that the need to get better, you could be driven to get better. You could be driven to get better, but you wanting to get better is as a curse to remain relevant. You are getting better because you want to remain relevant. Next is that you take glory for every success or achievement. Every success or achievement, you take glory for that, right? Because you see, this is what you have become. This is why you talk every day to be a doctor. And so very easily you take glory for whatever successes or achievements. You will also find it difficult to share knowledge with others or to impact knowledge to others. When medicine is an end to the means, that means that, you know, it ends with you. It starts with you, it ends with you. And you come first. You practice paternalism, where your views and not the views of your patients or any other person counts. On the other hand, if medicine is the means to an end, you know fully well that there is a greater purpose for you. Yes, fine, you're a doctor. Rather, you're a doctor for a reason. So you will see it as a tool with which you will achieve greater purposes. And these purposes, usually for a Christian medic, aligns with God's will for our lives. You will see the need to get better. And your reason for getting better is for those to whom medicine is an end to a means. They get better just to remain relevant, right? They do their residency, take postgraduate degrees and everything just to remain relevant as a doctor. If you don't put doctor when you're mentioning their names, you're in trouble. You must identify them as a doctor. Whilst if you see medicine as a means to an end, your desire to get better is for the sake of your patients. So I put it here as patients' unmet needs is equal to physician's education need. So you are studying, you are improving yourself because you want to be better for those you are taking care of. And every success or achievement you make will make you more humble, because you will be wondering, is it me? Did I just do this? Like, seriously? I don't think so. And it's very, very easy for you to keep pointing as the one who is giving you the strength and the grace to do whatever you are doing. You will also find yourself very willing to share knowledge with people and impact knowledge to others. And even when you aim better, you do so via selfless services. You don't have strings attached when you're rendering your services. No strings attached. It is usually selfless services. That or these are the things you find in someone who practices medicine as a means to an end, the greater end, the will and purpose of God for them. Okay, so we break now, and then we pick into my story part 2. So remember I said that I entered medicine with the mind of becoming wealthy. So I wrote JAMB, and then I met Christ even before I wrote JAMB, a few weeks after I submitted JAMB form. So even if I wasn't supposed to be in medicine, maybe if God had clearly told me, then I would have just not bothered writing JAMB and then written JAMB again. When I entered UNN with all those tough exams, Bio 101, Chem 101, very confusing things, anatomy, I thought I was an A student, but by the time I started studying anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, I was like, wow, what's going on here? And then I started asking God the question, do I really need to study medicine to heal the sick? Like, seriously. I mean, I'm a believer and I have faith. I can pray for people to get well. Do I really need to study medicine? It was a frank conversation I had with God. When medical exams begin to show you pepper, you will begin to ask questions like, okay, do I really need to do this? And I did ask God those questions. So one of those times I was having this frank conversation with God. He made me understand that, yes, I need to practice medicine. And that is because there are certain things I will not be able to do as a pastor. There are certain places I can't step foot in just with my title as a pastor. In fact, the moment I introduced myself as a pastor, they slammed the door against my face. And I'm like, oh, wow. And then he started giving me examples. And I can tell you, post-medical school, I see those things. The people that will come to my consulting room will talk so casually, so freely, and maybe they share their card with me. And when I pick up the card and I check their profile, goodness gracious, on a good day, I won't be welcome to the front of these people's houses if I wasn't a doctor. I won't even be allowed 10 kilometers to where they are, where they live, if I wasn't a physician. I needed to be a doctor to get access to certain places. And to the glory of God, brethren, I tell you, there are places I access. I recall one of those occasions, I was treating this gentleman. He was maybe 32 at the time and pretty young to me. In terms of, what portfolio health. And I needed to evacuate a patient to India for surgery. So and he's Indian. So one day we got talking when I was attending to him. This man that when I enter his house, he's running up and down looking for snacks for me, also want to have, drinks and everything. I'm good with my apple juice and, running around. So when I mentioned to him that, I might be in India, I'm trying to get a visa to India. I started processing. I said, yes, I have. He said, oh, wow. Have I submitted the documents? I said, no. He said, oh, send to me. When he said to send to me, I looked at him and in my mind, I was like, okay, yeah. But then, come on, what's wrong with you? I looked at his age and what is he going to do for me, really? So I didn't bother. And then we had a discussion not too long after that. And I was really brainstorming on how to go about this visa thing. And then he was like, doctor, you've not sent me the documents. So I said, oh, okay, I will. So I just said, I won't lose anything, sent to him. So I sent him a copy of what I had. And then he calls me up to say, oh, we have an appointment on so day. I'm like, seriously? So I went there. Long story cut short, when I finished discussing with the Deputy High Commissioner of the Indian Embassy in Lagos here, he asked me how I knew the guy. And I said, casually, he's my patient. And he said, wow, you're highly connected. So I said, okay. And then I left the office. So I picked up my phone and I checked. I just put his name on Google search. And behold, it was the CEO of BConnect and some other companies. And I said, what? I mean, this is someone I just talked to. I go to his house and he's opening the door, running around like a headless chicken to entertain me. I didn't know he had such portfolio. So it took my mind back to what God told me, that being a Christian medic was going to help me in fulfilling purpose. And by the time I left medical school, I continued to ponder on what God will have me do exactly. Yes, having been through NCCMDS, it was in my days, now CMDA, I knew very well that God will have me witness to people in the health space. God will have me organize outreaches, which to His glory I'm doing. But I didn't know specifically what area exactly He will have me function and how. The issue of leaving Nigeria did not start today. I recall my elder brother bought me in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, actually. He bought me books to write plan. I think maybe 50% of people that borrowed those books to read are in the UK and maybe moved from UK to Canada, Australia, something like that. And some of them, when we are discussing and they ask where I am, I say I'm in Nigeria. They're like, seriously? Because they read my books to travel out. Okay? So it's not as if it wasn't there. But somehow I wanted to be sure what God would have me do. I didn't just want to leave a space just for the sake of leaving the space. So I wanted to know what God would have me do. What area of specialization to that extent. Now, I worked with different consultants. I worked with some of the best gynecologists, people that spearheaded IVF treatment. And I recall one of them, he tipped me to do O&G. He was very certain. In fact, he pushed me to writing primaries in O&G. Unfortunately, a day or two to the primaries exams, I misplaced the documents I needed to present to write the exam. I worked with some of the best pediatricians who would look at me attending to children, and then they would say to me, "You are going to be a good pediatrician." I also worked with some surgeons in theater, and they would say to me, "Wow, your skills are second to none. You will be a good surgeon. You have the fingers of a surgeon." So you can imagine all these confusions: surgeon, O&G, pediatrics. Like, seriously, what is it going to be? What should it be? This was even post-graduation. And I struggled with this. I struggled for many years. But you see, along the line, God started putting some things in place. I'll take a pause here and then just continue with the outline, and I'll come back to it because some of them you're going to see here. If I am going to fulfill purpose in medicine, especially God's purpose, then I need to be aligned with His purpose for me. Some practical ways of understanding your purpose in medicine is: one, expressly hearing from God. I mean, if you're one of those that God spoke to and clearly told, as He did in Acts 13, when He said, "Separate me, Paul and Barnabas." It's very, praise God, it's clear. When God tells you where to go to, what to do, she can just glide, just glide on very easily. That could happen. It could happen. So there is a place for expressly hearing from God. Now, if you are in my own space where I did not expressly hear from God, in fact, there was quite a bit of confusion for me. I didn't really know where to settle and what to do, what to settle in. And even appointed. In the book of Acts chapter 6, 1-5, the apostle said, "Look, we can't be sharing bread. Let's appoint people." And people prayed, and they were filled with the Holy Ghost when they made the pronouncement that Stephen and some other people should be selected for purpose. Now, for me, for one reason or the other, I ended up managing the practices. Maybe my boss takes a leave for 6 months. He just abandoned with a big practice, and I started managing. So I contacted a friend of mine, and I were discussing one day, and I said to him that, "Look, I'm a little bit confused. I don't know what to do. I really want to do my residency in this and all of that." And then he smiled and he said, "Look, he's observed me for a while, and he feels that I would do well, that I would do well in hospital management. That was the way he put it. So I said, well, I know by God's grace I will own my practice, but in what? What would I do? So I looked at it, it would be a bad idea. So I started for a master's in health management, and that's where that came about. I found it very interesting. It has helped me in my practice of medicine and in many other aspects of my life. Knowledge is power, and no knowledge is a waste. And then I applied for a few jobs with that qualification, but that's not what God wants me to do, and that wasn't what God wanted me to do. So, in the middle of all of it, while I was really praying, I spoke with Professor 𝗵𝗂𝗧 one of those times. Okay, before I spoke with Professor 𝗵𝗂𝗧, I'd actually spoken with someone. I said to myself, okay, rolling out my life post-grad in front of me, and everything I was doing was to family medicine. The gynecologist wants you to be there. It is part of family medicine. The pediatricians feel you are going to be a good family medicine. The surgeon, oh, you have skills, you have it in medicine, and so on and so forth. Amidst that confusion, God pointed me to the fact that literally everything I've been doing was in line with family medicine. And I looked back and I saw how God had been faithful in that space. So I think it was in 2019 or so, I got talking to Professor Chima, and then he mentioned about this diploma program. And it wasn't very difficult for me to sign up for it. And I recall in some of the things that we were doing, even when we had the hands-on session, a number of the facilitators kept telling me things like, oh, it seems you have been doing this for quite a while. And I'm just smiling in my mind. I'm trying to merge now the fact that, being guided, and the fact that you would also see how easily you're drawn to it. Okay? So for me, I didn't see it, but that was actually what happened. I found that I had no bias about who I treated. Whoever it was that came, I treated, and I was so happy. In fact, in one of those hospitals I worked in, I recall the pediatricians being very upset with me and with the front desk personnel, because when they brought pediatric patients to the bed, they don't queue anyone to her. And she will hear children, she will come to the reception and see children running around, and then no one is ushered into her office. And then she goes to the front desk, and what's going on? And this same, and then say, oh, they requested to see Dr. 𝗵𝗂𝗧. I know how bad she felt about it. I wasn't a superstar. It was just something with, and the children, patients with hypertension would prefer to see Dr. 𝗵𝗂𝗧 because they say, oh, Dr. 𝗵𝗂𝗧 will even explain it better. In fact, when I escalate to maybe the cardiologist and I say to them, oh, you know what, at this point, I'll need a cardiologist to see you. They go to the cardiologist and they come back to me and say, look, please don't send us there again. We're better off just seeing you. And I'm like, seriously, I have to do what I need to do. And they say, oh, doctor, we are fine. When the need comes, you can send us there, but not to go there on a regular basis. So looking back, I saw that I was drawn to all of these things, and I did them with no much hassle. Remember, I said I was guided. A few people pointed out things to me. I didn't hear God expressly talk to me. I didn't hear expressly talk to me. Now, another thing is that you see that you've had experiences prior to your visibility. When I say visibility, you will understand it when, David was a boy. Okay? I'm sure David never signed up to be the king of Israel. I'm pretty sure he never signed up. And in fact, he was given that task as per, you just go and do this. You're probably of no use. You're better off there. Let the older ones go and fight. But that was a preparation ground for him. If you're going to lead the people of Israel, who were at some point described as stiff-necked, needed to have the shepherd experience. It happened even with Moses. And as you see in the book of Exodus chapter 4, he was a shepherd. Moses was raised in the palace. He lived like a prince. I'm sure he probably had a temper. And that was why he smote someone with one fist or two or three, and the person died. Right? But God needed to tenderize him. And to do that, he needed to be he needed to tend to the sheep. He needed to be in the wilderness. And he had experiences there. When David was talking to Saul, he said, look, when I was there tending my father's sheep, a lion came, I dealt with it. A bear came, I dealt with it. So while pondering on what God will have you do, believe me, when you look back at some of your experiences, it will help you know that, okay, I think this is it. In case you did not expressly hear from him about doing A, B, C, D, these are some of the ways that God can nudge you in that direction so that you will be able to know for certain that, okay, this is it. I believe this is what God will have me do. In fulfilling God's purpose in medicine, I told us a story at the beginning about the Samaritan who saw the sick, the injured man by the roadside. Now, this man obviously had some things he was going to do. I don't think he was idling away. And I don't think he was just running a random mobile clinic. I also told you of the challenge I had when I said to God, look, why do I have to study medicine? God has allowed us to be in medicine for a reason. Man is a spirit being. Man has a soul. And man has a body. And all these three things have to be catered for. Colleagues who aren't believers could also have the competence that we do. But one thing that would make us different as believers is the fact that we know there is a spirit being and that there is a soul in that man, that woman, that boy. If all we do is to administer medications and administer treatment, medicine will probably just be the end to our means. Because what is there after you've administered your medications? After you've done a successful surgery? You take the glory, you are the end point. But as Christian medics, we are in this for a greater purpose. One of the experiences I had that made me know that God will have me do medicine, during our clinical postings, the outreaches we had at CMDA, God bless the house of CMDA, really helped me to imbibe empathy, right? But you see, it had to be put to practice. HIV/AIDS became very popular in the late 80s, early 90s. I think Magic Johnson the American basketballer popularized it. I got to know about HIV because of Magic Johnson, and that's because I was one of his fans. So when we were doing our clinical postings in the 90s at UNTH, we had some cases of HIV. And trust me, colleagues will not touch these patients with a 10-foot pole. But as a believer, you know you can't do that. Do you have to take precautions? Absolutely. But you're not just going to walk away from them. And it is this extra mile you go to that would even make the patients listen to you when you preach Christ. If you treat them like any other person, they could get well with your treatment, but they've paid you for that service and it ends there. But when you go that extra mile, because you know that they are a living being, they have a spirit, they have a soul, you show empathy, you show care. You go the extra mile in ensuring that they get medications at when due. You don't discriminate. They have your ears, or you have their ears rather. And I recall on one of those occasions, there was this patient, she had this fistula, enterocutaneous fistula, secondary to adhesions that resulted after an abdominal surgery. So she had adhesions, she went into theater about twice to release the adhesions, but she also had HIV/AIDS. And nobody would want to talk to this person. And I said to myself, no, it won't be like that. I mean, the moment you enter the door to a room, you'll be hit with a nasty smell from fecal matter coming out. It was enterocutaneous. We'll have to pad it and pad it and pad it. Even at that, it will still smell. And when we went for rounds, people would wear masks and everything. I deliberately let down my mask. And on one of those days, when we were leaving after the round, the lady requested to see me. And so I stayed back. She asked for my name, I told her. And this lady happened to be a very well-connected person. The rest is history. The fact remains we lost her. But she made up with Christ before she died. In fact, the day she died, when she was taking her last breath, I was by her bedside holding her hand and telling her it is well. Safe journey. She had struggled. I prayed long before then. And I said, God, if it's your will, heal her. There's nothing I'm going to do here. But she died, and I'm glad she died knowing Christ. I had her ears, and she would do anything I asked her to do. As Christian medics, God is putting us in this space for a reason. So, how do we fulfill this purpose? You've understood God's purpose. This is why God will have you in medicine. You could have been anywhere else. You could have been a wonderful engineer. You could have been a wonderful lawyer. You will still do God's will. That's the truth. But you are in medicine, and you found yourself in medicine, and you see that medicine is the thing, as we stated at the beginning. So you're not one of those checking out. You are in this, and you are in it for God. God will have you witness on his behalf. So how do we go about it? Now, one of my favorite biblical characters is David. And David would always seek God's face. If you read the book of 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 8, you will see there where David was asking God if he should pursue and overtake or lay an ambush. And God said to him, pursue and overtake. On some other occasions, David would ask, should I pursue and overtake? And God will say, in this case, lay an ambush. Don't pursue and overtake. meaning that he constantly sought God's face for direction. When you read the book of Genesis, chapter 26, 1-3, it started by saying there was famine in the land, similar to the days of Abraham. He was talking of in Isaac's time. And Isaac, his father was Abraham, of course. He learned a lot from the father. Was already gathering his things to go to Egypt, like his father did when there was famine. And God said to Isaac, no, you won't go to Egypt like your father Abraham did. You will stay back here. And as you read further, Isaac stayed back, he dug wells, and the Bible said he flourished to the extent that his wealth intimidated other people, and they were afraid of him. So we can't be fulfilling the purpose of he that sends us without seeking his face continually. We must continually seek his face for direction. Now, you're not going to have it all easy. That's the truth. If I come here and I tell you that, oh, you are medicine, it's settled, you are going to be this, you're going to be that, you won't always have it easy. There are times you will be scared. There are times you will look at the situation around you and things are not adding up, as we say. You're putting in a lot of effort, but you don't seem to be getting the result. God is saying, hold on. And there are times when you could be sitting pretty and God is telling you, look, move. But that can only happen when we continually seek God's face. Now, having sought his face and he gives us directions, what other things, can we do here? I wrote here, what is that in your hand? Many of us have rods that can do great exploits in our hands and we are not aware. When Moses was trying to give God an excuse for, he couldn't do it, God asked him, what is that in your hand? And he said, a rod. And God said, cast it down. And he cast it down and it became a serpent. And it was that same serpent that swallowed up the serpents of the Egyptians. Moses saw a rod with which he was hitting the sheep to put them in order, guiding the sheep. God saw in his hands something more than a rod. There are things we are carrying that we don't even give attention to. God, our maker, knows what is in that rod. He knows the power of the rod. It was that same rod with which he parted the Red Sea. Unfortunately, he overdid it. When God said he should speak to the rock, he hit the rock with the rod, knowing, this rod has done a lot of things, and he got into trouble. That rod in your hands, you need to discover it. You need to see the rod as God sees it. It could be your bedside manners. It could be your voice. It could even be the way you communicate. God is saying to you, you have a rod in your hands. That rod is there. I want to use it. So he has an array of fields we can plow. I think we see for junior doctors, the confusion. We've had sessions where people ask us, okay, one of the things we look at for when we are trying to, decide where to specialize in is A, B, C, D. Of course, money comes in. I'll be honest with you, money is good. Now, I entered medicine because of money, I said so. But I tell you that there are things I can do that will fetch me more money now looking back. If I didn't study medicine, I would have done some other things that will fetch me money. And by now, I'll just be picking my tooth, with toothpick, shaking my leg, and then planning my next vacation to the Bahamas or something, right? So it's not all about money. And in deciding what area you will go to, I shared my story with us earlier. When you have that confusion, please seek God's face. Pray It might not come to you expressly, but God could send people to you to help, to guide you and give you directions. You will feel it. You will see yourself. You do those things with ease. I don't know if I can just, go back to that slide. Okay. You see yourself easily drawn to it. All right. And I mean, so my wife is in public health, and truth of the matter is she attempted primaries in pediatrics. She had worked with me in some outreaches when I was school mission secretary, and she handles children. But I tell you what, it was a good thing my wife did not end up in pediatrics. And I say it, that I'm glad you did not end up in pediatrics, because you do not have the patience for that. You don't. You can't even stand the sight of poo-poo. I mean, my son farts in the room and she's pursuing him with a cutlass, like, exaggerating though. How would you do pediatrics? But she's in public health, and I believe it was along the line. She had people who spoke to her and guided her, and she's doing well, and she's flying in public health. So while we see God's face, He can reveal it to us. We may see ourselves being drawn to it. If we look back, we can see grounds we have gained in those areas, and it's very easy to walk in that direction. I wrote here that none of these fields is inferior or superior to others. Some people feel until they are surgeons, until they cut with a knife, they are not doing exploits. No. You can find relevance in any of this and glorify God at the end of the day. It could be clinical medicine, primary care, internal medicine, OBGYN, pediatrics, surgery. It could be preventive medicine. This is where I will categorize public health and the rest of them. I have friends who are in the public health space, and they are doing very well, and they are happy. They have good job satisfaction and glorifying God in it. I mean, our chief executive, we all know, Professor Chimonoka, has distinguished himself in that space to the glory of God. And then we have health insurance, just to mention a few. I have my conclusion here. But before I conclude, conclusion says my part complete this mission to accomplish. And is to care for the whole man, spirit, soul, and body. Anytime I sing this song, I'm happy because I see myself doing my part. And I also ask myself, how well am I doing this part? How well you will do this will depend on our understanding of our understanding of the will of God for us in medicine, our understanding of the fact He, as God, who gave us this vision, can see us through, no doubt about it. Okay? And we need to lean on Him to provide us with guidance. I haven't come to say to young doctors whether or not the shores of Nigeria. I used to be very outspoken about leaving, and if you meet me personally, I would also tell you that, but I am not God, and I honestly don't know His exact will for you. But you will be running like a headless chicken if you join the movement. Sit back and ask what God will have you do.